And the reason for that is because that way recording is a lot easier, and transferring. And that means that the whole thing will automatically be on the YouTube channel for anybody that falls behind, which I do think is, in some ways, computers are better than real life in that regard, right? If you're sick, you can just kind of catch up. So I should also start recording in a minute. Let me just check the participant list one more time, make sure nobody needs to be promoted. But I think we're going now, right? So there's not this moment where we have to click and say, as it were, live from Swarthmore, it's Saturday night, I'll start recording now, but we're ready basically to go. You're frowning.
Let's turn the recording off.
Sorry?
I had a red recording button and now I don't. Are you sure the recording's on and not off?
Mine says live on YouTube.
I do see live on YouTube, but like before you touched anything, it also said recording like that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. So it probably was recording before.
I think it was recording before.
Yeah, because I had it automatic. Well, so there's going to be a lot of garbage on the recording. And then
That's good.
That's part of our allure.
Is it? I think I have to say, I find it really tedious. The other times I've tried to be in any other kind of one of these things, all of that kind of, is this microphone working, I find very annoying. But we are ready to start. We've got nobody that needs to be promoted or has asked to be promoted. I think there's a way to ask to be promoted, but I'm not sure what that is. I guess you could just chat and say, please promote me. And we are reading Abelard's, what's this thing called again? Historia Calamitatum, supposedly a letter to a real friend, although some people seem to think it's a hypothetical friend, all about his troubles, mostly, I think, self-imposed, but what's the word? When you bring these things on yourself.
Self-induced?
Self-induced, self-inflicted, shooting himself in the foot, so to speak, on a regular basis. He's kind of an appealingly weird person. I have nothing to say at the beginning, except we should read this Latin. It's the Latin I find really very difficult to be intuitive about. It's the word order is, I think it's both odd as classical Latin while being grammatically classical. The word order is somehow, Jen, do you agree, is somehow off?
I absolutely agree. I think grammatically it is very standard, but a lot of the way he puts together the phrases don't strike me as typical.
Right, almost contrived or exciting and interesting, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen says it feels off to me even for 12th century Latin. Well, that's interesting, but then what's normal? But that's a different discussion. So unless does any of the I'm trying to use the right word, the attendees, would anyone like to be promoted? William of Malmesbury is normal, says Karen. Okay. Would any of the attendees like to be promoted to translate, or shall we do our other favorite thing, which is call on Jen to do it? Let me see if there's... Yeah, okay. No one's volunteering, so Jen, take it away, chapter 1.
So I'm going to read it in Latin. I'm going to read it in classical Latin just because that's easiest for me. Sorry to non-sensory people who wouldn't understand me. So, saepe humanos affectus aut provocant aut mitigant amplius exempla cum verba. Often, and so you have to, and of course it's a beginning. Beginnings are always really hard. Like I always tell students that, like, if you think that a work is too hard, skip the beginning, like skip the whole preface and just go to the actual story, and it's probably easier because everyone works really hard on the beginning and then they calm down. So examples often, rather than words, either call forward or soften human emotions. Unde post non nullam sermones ad praesentam habiti consolationem de ipsis calamitatum mearum experimentis consolatorium ad absentem scribere decrevi. For that reason, I decided after some consolation of a conversation that was held to you present, but like with you present, I decided to write a letter of consolation, consolatorium, to you absent, concerning the very experiences of my disasters. Ut in comparationem mearum tuas aut nullas aut modicas temptationes recognoscas et tolerabilios feras, so that in comparison with mine, you would recognize that your trials were either not trials at all or moderate ones, and you would endure them with greater toleration.
Yes. Very good. Obviously. Again. However, we've also realized we don't have Brian O'Donnell, which means Jen, maybe, oh wait, Chris Bart says, depending on how attendance is later, Chris, do you want to be promoted right now to read section 2?
There you go.
He says, sure. Okay, that means I have to figure out how to do it again, which means it's really not that hard, but wait a minute. Okay, we're about to welcome Chris into the fold. It is kind of exciting.
Oh, we got something.
Chris, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
I think it might be using the wrong camera on my tablet there.
It's certainly giving, I think it's about to say Toshiba or, oh, there you are.
There we go. There it is.
Excellent.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well.
So without small talk, without the who are you and where are you from, let's just
Well,
plunge in.
William, while we're stopped, it looks like Paula's here now.
Mhm.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let's bring her into. Well, so in that case, Chris, who are you and where are you?
I am a recent college graduate of Benedictine College. I was a computer science major, but I did a couple of years of Latin my first couple of years of college.
Wow.
Really, I'm just trying to get back into things, and I've done a lot of singing with liturgical Latin, so I'm somewhat familiar with the orations and everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's kind of funny because reading through Abelard's Latin, his sentence structure, while strange, reminds me kind of that odd conglomeration of what you would expect of a classicist right at the time of writing a whole lot of those orations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Sort of classicizing while
kind of a classicized ecclesiastical Latin.
Hi, Paula.
This is on many levels. Oh, Paul, you're muted, I think.
Yeah, I've unmuted her. This is Paula. She's another old timer back for another summer or part of another summer. So Chris, take it away at chapter 2.
Chapter 2. I therefore.
Oh, sorry. Jen is training me to ask people to read each sentence in Latin first.
Very good.
Sure is the right thing to do.
Very
with
good.
any pronunciation, totally fine.
Yes, with medieval or classical.
Okay, very good, because I'm not sure how well I could do on the classical one. Ego igitur, opido quordam oriundus, quod in ingresso minoris Britanniae. A second. My tablet's giving me a little bit of trouble here. Here we go. Quod in ingresso minoris Britanniae constructum ab orbe namnetica versus orientem octo, credo, meliaris remotum, proprio vocabulo palatium appellator, sicut ora terra me vel generis animo levis, ita et ingenio extiti, et ad literatorium disciplinam facilis.
Wow, it sounds great. It's like strolling through the cloisters and the colonnade in the Vatican. You know, it's very, very medieval. All right, take it away.
I therefore, originating from a certain town, which was constructed in the entrance to Brittany, from the town of Nantes to the east, 8, I believe, miles remote, called by its own idiom the Palatium. Just as by the nature of my country or race I was clever, so I also naturally stood forth, and found literary discipline easy.
Wow. That was not only totally right and accurate, I think, right? Everybody, that was right and accurate. That's also, you have that ability to put it into coherent English on the fly, which I think is really impressive.
Not quite on the fly. I
Well, I'm not saying you didn't read it before, but I don't know. Anyway, keep going. That's great.
Okay, very good. Me itaque primogenitum suum, quanto cariorem habeba, tanto diligentius erudiri curavit.
Did you go on to the next chunk by
Oh,
chance?
sorry, that was the
Yes,
next.
I think I was, thank you. I was lost.
My mistake there.
Yes, patrem autem.
Patrem autem. And my tablet is being a little slow again. My apologies. Patrem autem habebam literis aliquantulum invitum, antequam militari cingulo inserietur. Let's see. I had a father who was rather decently imbued with letters before he took the mark of the military sash.
Yes, exactly. One more sentence.
Unde post modum tanto litteras amore complexus est, ut quoscumque filius haberet, litteris antequam armis instrui disponeret. Whence shortly he had so lovingly embraced letters, that whatsoever children he might have, he ordained them to be instructed in letters before arms. Sique profecto actum est, and this undoubtedly was accomplished.
Good. Did everyone get that complexus litteras tanto amore, with so much love? I think would be literal. I mean, yours is more literate. That's the only Latin trick, I think.
It's a deponent, isn't it? Complexus.
Complexus, yes. No, that you were totally right about. No, I was just I'm very obsessed with tantus aum and tantum. And so tanto goes with amore, right? With so much love, he was embraced. He embraced the literature with so much love. And again, that word order seems slightly like why would you put literas in the middle of tanto and amore? I mean, except to be clever.
Well, and I think that's what he's doing. I think he's making a word picture. I think he's embracing the letters.
Right. 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 I hate that. My life ambition is to avoid word pictures, but then that's my problem. You
sound like most students. They say that too.
Sorry.
Every time we get to a word picture, they're like, no.
I think there's much to be said, no doubt, about whether Abelard's father was unusual in being both a knight and interested in education. Certainly people talk about this as being kind of special, right, Jameson?
It is unusual.
And I guess it makes sense. I mean, that it would be unusual, and lo and behold, we have an unusual man emerging from this upbringing. People talk about, we forget about Abelard as a personality, but people talk about him being sort of big and strong and handsome and like kind of a rock star, you know, and we just don't think of him that way. At least I don't think of him that way, because of course he's writing these Latin word pictures, which I don't think is how rock stars spend their time. But there does seem to be, and there people talk about how there are a lot of military metaphors in his account of himself, that he's going to war with his enemies, and there's this kind of inherited militaristic element in his makeup, which he gets from his maybe from his upbringing.
It was
Right.
actually extremely unusual for knights to be literate.
Right, that's what I've always been.
Right on up to royalty, kings themselves at this time. I mean, it changes. We're talking about the Middle Ages. It's 1,200 years and a long period of time. But in this part of Western Europe, in the early 12th century, late 11th century, it's extremely unusual for knights to be literate. And that's why you have Abelard, and then you also have Bernard, who is a younger contemporary. And they're both very literate, but they come from knightly families, and it's unusual for them to want to take up the cloth, as it were.
Right.
It's very unusual.
Right.
And it's unusual for Francis a century later, although I think he comes from a merchant family. There are just some groups of people where if you're a hale, healthy son, you're not supposed to go be a monk.
Right.
And it creates great consternation and disruption and things like that. And if, Abelard lived 20 or 30 years later, he might have ended up joining the Templars, which is one way we know that most knights were extremely illiterate, because most of the Templars were illiterate.
Okay.
Just a couple things that Karen just put into the chat. Quick, not to make excuses for Abelard being cutesy, but one thing to expect in medieval Latin is little sense of the decorum of verse versus prose, like verse effects, like this kind of word painting being used in prose. And then medieval education was almost as thoroughly verse-based as my Swarthmore education was.
Well, that was your choice of courses, my dear. And then
keep in mind, we're getting into the Romance languages period, and so there's a lot of influence from like the chansons and things like that. I mean, there's a tendency among the Celts and the Gauls and the various people who've been learning this Latin to learn things in verse orally. So, but I don't think it's really entirely clear how much of that tradition it is, because Abelard's kind of coming at sort of the beginning of when we really know a whole lot about people. I mean, the 11th, you get much earlier than this, and it's pretty cloudy about a lot of European culture. But I think that it's really not, if you're looking at Western European literature and stuff, overall, especially with what they're doing with the Vulgate kind of dialects languages, it's really not surprising at all that they have this versy kind of approach to Latin.
Right. Karen continues, Virgil always and Ovid newly in this period, plus the Christian Latin poets who tend to be OTT.
Over the
top.
Over the top? Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a little personal spat between me and her about her education, which I seem to have.
Well, remember that they don't know, they're still recovering all of these Latin classics that we have now.
Right. But they did know their Ovid and their Virgil.
Yeah.
I'm going to promote Brian, who's joined us and who's been raising his hand patiently, although I guess virtually raising his hand isn't that hard. Hi, Brian. I need to unmute him. We've done your passage, I'm afraid. We're ready to move on, but it's good to see you.
With a big effort to get started again, I forgot how it got kind of rusty over the past 9 months.
Well, that's right. You need to keep your Latin.
Really interesting story, that's for sure.
All right, I think we're ready for 2.2, which is Victoria. Take it away.
Me itaque primogenitum suum, quanto cariorum habebat, tanto diligentius erudiri curavit. Me, therefore, his firstborn, he by so much as he had great care, cariorum, I was having a hard time finding that, by so much By that amount, he also was very eager or cared to have me carefully educated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cariorem from caros, the adjective. So like
Okay.
the dearer he held me, the more it's you supply me with it. So the more he held me dear, by so much more diligently, more carefully did he see to it. That that's
Right. And the quanto sets up the tanto, right? By more, I think you got that. By
Yeah,
by
by so
the
much
more
as.
he did the one thing, the more diligently he did the other thing.
Yeah.
I
And,
go,
oh, I'm sorry. Karen points out first glimpse of Abelard's addiction to correlative clauses, which is so true.
He uses them all over the place.
Okay.
ego vero quanto amplius, there goes another one, quanto amplius et facilius in studio literarum profeci, tanto ardentius eis in hesi, et in tanto iarum amore electus sum, ut militaris gloriae pompam cum hereditate et prerogativa primogenitorum meorum fratribus de relinquens, it's still going on. Martis curiae penitus abdicarum ut Minervae gremio educarer. Breathe. I truly, or I, however, by so much as I achieved more and easily in the study of letters, by so much, I cleaved to them more ardently.
Mm-hmm.
And in so much as and so much I was enticed by love of them that relinquishing to my siblings the pomp or the display of military glory, cum along with my heredity and the rights of primogeniture, rights of the firstborn, I rejected wholly the court of Mars, or the arena of Mars, I guess, so that I might be educated or lifted up, pun, into the bosom of Minerva.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Et quoniam, and
Sorry, one note that I would have on hereditate is, how did you translate hereditate again?
basically as heredity, that which I inherited, my birthright, my
Right, yeah.
my heredity.
In a lot of liturgical Latin, that typically gets translated as inheritance, quite literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the translations of the words that look very familiar and very Latin-y are often pretty literal in medieval Latin from this period. Although you do have false friends.
Sure.
Et quoniam dialecticarum rationem armaturam omnibus philosophiae documentis pretuli, his armis alia commutavi et tropheis bellorum conflictus pretuli disputationem. And let's see, because I preferred the armament, or the armament of rational dialectics, to all the proofs of philosophy, I switched one set of arms for another, and preferred preferred the conflict of disputation to the trophies of war. Is that based on the note? Is that how that should be set up?
I think so.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, yeah, I think you did that exactly right, Victoria. I think that's a thing that's often difficult for people, is using praefero and other verbs that take a double object, because so the main object, the direct object, is the accusative. That's the conflictus, accusative plural fourth declension. That would have a macron, conflictus. And then it takes a dative of the thing you prefer it to.
Okay. Proinde diversos disputando per ambulans provincias, ubicunque huius artis vigere studium audieram, peripateticorum emulator factus sum. So accordingly, perambulating the diverse provinces for the purpose of disputation, wherever I heard that the love of that art flourished, I emulated, or I became an imitator of the peripatetics.
Yes. I do want to make a plea for the pluperfect, don't I? Audieram, partly because at least one of my Latin 1 students is watching or was, and I just want to continue to reinforce the pluperfect. I had heard, I was made, right? It's just, along with Tantus, it's one of my latest obsessions. Good. I love the idea of him being an emulator of the peripatetics, whatever he thought that meant, yes, and there's a whole, if you read the biographies of Abelard, there's lots of discussion about what he was actually learning in this time. He's very sketchy about this very formative period of his education. And so we only really meet him as a fully fledged scholar. So we've got a lot of discussion here. First glimpse of adjective to correlative clauses. This is Karen. Drinking game. I'm struck by how much this resembles Saith's life of the 11th, 12th century, in which boys of noble birth gave it up to become monks, found monasteries, etc. Daniel Jameson says, definitely. Well, this is your discussion, Jameson.
This is, yeah. It's.
We'll take.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, my take on it is that sometimes these kinds of riffs on hagiography are a little bit intentionally over the top. Or, I mean, especially with this heroic period of Abelard's life where he's wandering the countryside and battling the dragons of Recitilian sort of. I mean, what's really going on here? I mean, is this supposed to be tongue-in-cheek? I don't know. Jen doesn't agree.
I don't think so, but I mean, I don't know anything else about him other than what I've read in here, and it did not strike me as being anything other than completely dead serious. So yeah, I would actually like to think that he was not dead serious, but
I would agree. I would agree with Jen, because if you look at the how should we say, the spectacular mistakes that Abelard made in his life, a man with a lesser ego probably would have said, maybe I should not get involved with my underage noble girlfriend here, who has some very angry brothers who are also rich and powerful and might castrate me.
And maybe my logic won't serve me in this circumstance, right?
Yeah. I mean, he is, I can easily see him being a guy who would hagiographic himself. Also, you're talking about, this is the early period of the Western European time of heresy. And, you know when we had the more ancient people, there somebody was like sending zingers someone's way, and that was maybe just that they were being nasty. When someone is correcting someone else's theology, this is during a period of 2 or 3 centuries or so when theology is rapidly changing. And what you thought at the beginning of your life could be radically different and heretical at the end of your life. And, Abelard was in the dock for a few times for heresy, and he's basically defending himself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's hard for me to imagine about that it's humorous, but Karen writes, Dan, I go back and forth on whether he had a sense of humor. There is, of course, a huge monastic tradition of portraying celibates as milites Christi. Not quite what he's talking about here, but he could have not been unaware of that tradition. So anyway, any other thoughts? Should we move on? So Owen?
Yeah.
You're not Owen.
I am Owen. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't, by the way, he keeps going on about his calamities in the letters with Elwaz as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he doesn't like, he doesn't drop the shtick with her.
Right.
That's what it is. So, yeah. So the first one here is, it's just one really long sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So I might kind of break it off after halfway through. So, Verveni tandem Parisius, ubi a maxime disciplina ec florere consuerat, ad guil helmum scilicet campelensem preceptorem meum in hoc, magisterio re et fama precipium. So I came at length to Paris, where at that time this discipline of dialectic or philosophy had been accustomed to flourish. To Guillaume Campelensis, or William of Champeaux, who was my teacher in this. And I think you have in the notes that it could be in hoc disciplina, but like sort of philosophy. But I was thinking it could also be like in this place, or maybe in this time. So in hoc
maybe.
loco. Because he was his teacher in Paris there.
Right.
Yeah.
Either in hoc loco
or tempore.
Or tempore.
Right.
Well,
or in the subject.
Yeah, that's what it said in the notes.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But it does require taking a neuter to be in hoc disciplina.
Yeah, it seems place like locum seems like the most logical thing to me, because immediately afterwards he says, and at that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, tunc.
I'm not sure what I think about that. I wish I'll check other people's translations.
I don't know. I really don't think it could be. That just I really think that it is a neuter accusative, not ablative masculine.
I think the word order is what makes me think that he's the teacher in this subject, the teacher in this time, in this place.
Right.
It seems too emphatic to be that. But
I would agree with Owen here. Actually, I think what's going on is he's saying I came to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, I came to William of Campeaux in this place. My teacher in this place.
So wouldn't he say Ibby?
Yeah.
You could say a lot of things for in this place.
Well, okay, sure.
But in hoc, I don't know. Hoc seems to work for. I think it's either way. I think they both work.
Well, it seems like here to me.
If
Even
you
the
actually
fit there.
I mean, there's the in part.
I think if you take that comma out, in hoc tunc magisterio, and just put that phrase together,
Mm-hmm.
in this teaching at that time, the like most well known.
Oh, wow. Oh, I see. So take hoc with magisterio.
Yeah, take it as in hoc tunc magisterio, like that whole thing is a phrase.
What about the Shilitet in there, in the sense that if he's saying, and of course I came across none other than William of Champeaux here in this place, it would almost seem like that Shilitet almost enforces the idea that it's the place and time where he is, that it's almost absurd that he runs into his former teacher.
He doesn't just run into him though. He go there?
He seeks him out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think personally, I think Jen is right, and that we get rid of the comma and we take it with magisterio. I think
I would
solves all the problems.
Yeah, I'd like to have a preposition with magisterio. I think that just that's what I do.
Right.
It works nicer than by his teaching or by his. It's much better actually. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, then you don't have two ablatives of respect or like without the like. I think anyway, that's what I would do.
Good. I thank you.
So in whose teaching at this time he was, so who was distinguished in this teaching at this time, both factually and in reputation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that works really well.
Okay. So I'll go on.
Sure.
Cum quo aliquantulum moratus, primo ei acceptus, post modum gravissimus extiti, cum non nullas scipiet eius sententias refelere conare, et ratio senari contra eum saepius, it would be, I suppose, aggrederer, et non numquam superior in disputanto videre. Sorry, where am I now? So and is implied, I guess, with whom I lingered, so with William of Champeaux, I lingered for a fair while, first accepted by him, afterwards most seriously estranged from him. That is to say, when I attempted to refute a few of his opinions and advanced arguments against him, and was sometimes seen to be superior in the disputation.
Mm-hmm. Did everyone get that? He was very fluid, which makes it hard to see how the Latin works.
Sorry.
But
Aggrederer.
What's that?
I got hung up trying to translate aggrederer.
Let's see. Sorry, I have too many things open on the computer.
against whom, when often I was attacking. Often I was attacking him.
Yeah, or I had
Again?
Approaching, going against him, sort of.
Yeah.
I thought that it meant to begin here because it's taking the complementary infinitive with ratio canari.
Begin rather than
meaning attack here.
Right. Okay.
But isn't sententias eius the object? So it's not him, it's his opinions, and so I had to refute a few of his opinions.
Well, the contra eum, when I was beginning to reason against him.
Yeah.
Or even set about to calculate against him more wisely.
Right. I had, because aggrederer I was translating as, because it means like to advance, and I was having trouble fitting that together with ratio senari, so I had to advance arguments against him.
Yeah, it definitely does mean to move towards and therefore to attack, but it also just means to begin.
Right. So go on. So I was going on to
ratio
canari.
Yeah. Persuade or argue.
Right. I was. Yeah. Thank you. Good. Good. Do you want to keep going, Owen?
Yep. So quod quidem et ipsi qui inter conscolares nostros praecipui habebantur, tanto maiori sustinebant indignatione, quanto posterior habebar aetatis et studi tempore. Hinc calamitatum mearum, quae nunc usque perseverant, peperunt exordia, et quo amplius fama extendebantur nostra, aliena in me subpensa et invidia. So because indeed, I had much more trouble with this, so yeah, please tell me where I went wrong. So because indeed, the very ones who were considered the most distinguished of our students, the more senior of them is kind of what I took it to be. So the more senior of them upheld their antipathy or disdain the more junior I was considered to be in age and in time of study.
I think one of the ways around it is to take the quad as the object of the stinaband. Okay, basically the previous idea, this sort of situation I was in, disputing against William, this thing they sort of endured with the greater, as you put it, indignation.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be quad, like all of that which, like it's referring back to the
sorry, I don't know what I was
the object of sustainabon. I think another place you got a little off track was maiori. It's not nominative. It's not the subject. It's actually, well, it's ablative, even though that shouldn't be the ablative ending. It's ablative with indignatione. So they were so the more by how much they were sustaining it with greater indignation, by so much was I considered,
okay.
etc.
So the cause of my being considered young is their indignation, not the other way around.
That's why they were mad, because I was younger than them and I had been studying less time, and how dare I? I was just better, says Abelard.
But in the sense, because that's what I took it to mean, is that the reason that they're annoyed is because he's younger.
Yep.
Yes.
Would that be more normal order if those phrases were flipped, quanto posterior habet, and then tanto minori following it?
Definitely.
Okay.
That's why I was having trouble with it.
Right. I mean, the flipping, I think, is something certainly that any classical author could do. It plays against your expectation in a way that they find clever, and even I can find powerful and attractive.
Because would that flipping not be just to do with the order of the phrases? I didn't think that you could switch the correlatives, so I would expect it to be like tanto posterior habebar aetatis, and quanto maiori sustinabant indignatione.
The idea is like it's by how the quanto is by how much, the more that I was younger, the more they were mad. So the idea is it has to be the tanto quanto, but the ideas are the other way.
And there's no difficulty, is there, Jen, in saying quanto first?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's perfectly clear the way it is. He just loves these phrases so much.
Right. All right.
I'll go on, yeah. So, thus commenced my calamities, which I endure even till now. And the more our reputation has increased, the royal we is the more the envy of others is kindled against me.
Yes.
So I think I like aliena, I've converted into a genitive because I couldn't figure out how to parse it otherwise.
Yeah, well, it's a hard word. I mean, it just means that it means another's belonging to someone else. It's just there's no one good word to translate alienas that I can think of. It's just
we don't have an adjective that means that.
Right.
Well, there's alien. That's always confusing.
We have what?
We have alien, but that's always confusing.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean right. But you don't say I'm using this alien car this afternoon.
What did you say?
Did you say hostile? Like hostile envy?
No, it really just means belonging to other people.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean what alien means in English.
Right. That's
like
I mean, really, if I borrow Jen's car, it would be aliena machina.
That's why one of the words for debt in Latin is alienum ice, other people's money.
Right, somebody else's money is debt. Right. Great. Well, thank you. Now, we do a quick last check to see if Greg is here.
One note before we go on, William, in the note that you had about Parisius, it's actually an adverb. You have it as an indeclinable noun, but there is an indeclinable noun Parisii, but when I looked it up, Parisius is actually listed as
just an adverb. Okay.
Adverb?
Yeah.
This is the kind of quasi-locative for Paris?
That's what I would have said.
So it's well, that's at least the
what did you look it up in?
Latin from the British sources one, listed this as an adverbial form.
Adverbial. So how would you translate that if it's an
to
adverb?
Paris or in Paris? So it translates exactly the same way, but like I think it's actually an adverb, not a noun.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I mean, I think the only place I could have seen it listed as a noun would be in Niemeyer, the medieval Latin dictionary. But he's not very good on the things like that. I don't like it as an adverb.
No, I've seen it. I mean, I see Parisius fairly often. I work with economic records, and I see it in the 14th century. It always means at Paris or to Paris. So, but I think it's a corruption. Clearly, it's some sort of weird form.
It's a corruption of Parisiis. The Parisii were the inhabitants of that region in classical Latin. Thank you, Jen. I'm not sure that I'm going to, I can obsess about a lot of things, but I think maybe not that. Partly because it's medieval and I don't therefore care. I mean, about locating the grammatical expressions very much. I mean, if the medievalists don't care enough to have it all very carefully organized, then I can't do anything about it. So Karen is confirming Jen's theory, Parisii 3 as adverb I use in or at Paris. Fine. All right. Thank you, both of you. Karen, thank you, Jen. I'll care a little bit.
Okay.
I'll change it anyway. All right, let me just check, make one more chance. Greg's not here. Greg, I actually met, Greg's son graduated a couple of weeks ago and we actually got to talk. So it's the first time ever that I've actually seen someone from this experience in real life that I didn't know already. So it was very exciting. People are real. So would anyone like to volunteer? Brian, you didn't get to do your section. Do you want to do the next section for chapter 4? Or would you rather not?
I don't think I'll tackle this one. I had a lot of trouble with it.
All right. Anybody want to volunteer in the great virtual world of the 19 participants? No one's raising their hand. Jen, you know what this means.
Oh.
All right.
I'll go ahead and start.
Oh, okay.
Since
Let me know if you want to give up.
Okay, so factum tandem est ut supra vires etatis de ingenio meo presumens ad scholarum regimen sensus aspirem. And I'll start there. In the end, it was done so that anticipating my ability above the men of that generation, and I, very young, aspired to professorship of the school. The place in which it was conducted.
In which, notice that subjunctive, imperfect subjunctive. I was providing a place in which I could do this. Right?
Okay, that makes much more sense.
Providing or foreseeing?
Providing.
I thought it meant providing.
Yeah, make a provision for prepare. While we're stopped, look at vires again. That's not weary. That's vires, virium, strength.
Mm-hmm.
So like trusting in my natural talent beyond the strength of my years, of my age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's much better. Thank you, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
So weir is always second declension when it, like man, second declension. Weist in the third declension. And the singular means force, violence. It's irregular. And then in the plural, it means strength. So very, very easy to mix those up.
The providerem, I have one translation that certainly sees it as, translates it, I had my eye on a sight, which is what, was that Chris? Who was that suggested that for provideo? So not that he found one, but that he was looking for one. Although since he finds one, I'm not sure quite why we think that, but anyway, it's certainly a possibility. Keep going, Brian.
Okay, well, The whole series of adverbs here. Notable, evidently, then of that time, the town of Melun and the royal seat. So I guess Melun is a royal seat, but I'm wondering if I missed a verb or something in that series of.
I think it's just those are just in apposition to locum, right? I was trying to find a place that I could do this, namely the fortress of what is this of Melun and the royal seat. So I think those are just in apposition to the locum.
All right, thank you.
And in fact, the Widelicet is often used to kind of how would you say this? Somebody help me out. Introduce an apposition that's that explains something else.
Namely.
Namely. So in fact, we see that in our footnotes, right? People use wid or wid. What do they say in footnotes? Just VID?
Viz.
Viz, right. They say viz, right.
Because it's that abbreviation from the manuscripts where they were writing.
Where that comes from?
The I and the little.
Right. Yeah, so that's where we get the viz in our footnotes, you know, and so it works exactly this way here. A place, namely, the camp of Melun. Good. Do you want to keep going?
All right, I'll forge ahead here. This praeseni predictus magister meus et quo longius poset scholas nostras se removere conatus. And I'll just do that set of phrases because I'm still puzzling over some of it. All right, so my teacher apprehended this beforehand. And
my aforesaid teacher.
My aforesaid teacher, right. And where far off he was able to remove our students. I didn't know where to go with this.
I think the trick is that quo has to mean something like, it's really the same as ut. In order, so you use quo often with a comparative, in order that he could remove our scholars farther away.
And conatus.
Oh, sorry. In other that.
Let's go with he.
I think the best thing to do is just kind of put a
attempted, or it was attempted, or no.
Mm-hmm. That's right. He attempted.
Right. Sorry, what were you going to say, Jameson?
Actually, I don't know if I actually buy that anymore. I've convinced myself already.
I guess having tried that he could remove the scholars more far away.
All right, so I figured out what he's doing here. So he's taking the scholars from their school to someplace else.
Well, he wants to. He wants to take Abelard students away from him.
Well, I see. So to take them away from Abelard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
I think it all hinges off the conatus. I think it's having tried quibus potuit modis with means that he could, in order to remove the sort of schools away from himself, sort of from him. Does that make sense? Sorry. Now that I say it, it makes less sense than it did in my head. One of those things.
Oh, he wants to remove my school.
Yeah.
As far away as he can from himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the quo longius posset is a single phrase, and it's not it wouldn't make any sense to have the quo determining conatus, because that would be the main verb then.
You're quite right.
Right.
And so you would need conatus esset, not posset.
Yes,
so I think the further he could having tried to remove our students from him, whatever his name is.
Right. William. That's right.
Maybe he could.
Okay, everyone got that? I think that's totally right. So having tried to remove our students from him, quo longius posset, as far as he could.
Yeah.
Good, keep going.
Okay. Quibus potuit modis latenter machinatus est, quisquam a suis recederem scholis. Okay, let me try that chunk. He was able, in this way, secretly plotted to slip away from his students.
I think the reason this is a bit tricky is because the ut is governing the praepediret, and priusquam is governing recaterem. So he plotted to ut, praepediret, all that, and he plotted to do that priusquam before, with an anticipatory subjunctive, before recaterem, I could withdraw a suis schools from his school. Do you see how that's working? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, in this sense makes it a little easier.
So then before I could leave, he plotted to do two things: to praepedire nostrarum praeparationem scholarum, and to provisum mihi locum alferet.
Right, to take away the place foreseen by me.
From me.
Yeah.
To take away from me the foreseen place. To take away from me the foreseen place. The foreseen place.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
which, by the way, confirms that Chris was right about it being foreseen rather than gotten.
Yeah.
He didn't provide for the place. He just planned on having one.
Isn't that what provide for means?
Provito to see.
Well, I was taking provide for as getting one. You know, so. I mean,
I don't know. I would think that would mean to like make arrangements for it, like, you know, to say like, oh, I'm going there.
Sure. I guess provide for is ambiguous. Right?
It's too close to provided a place. I think that's the sort of issue.
Yeah.
So it sounds like provided a place, and that sounds like you're in control.
Right.
Situation.
So it's really just well, all right. Back to you, Brian.
Okay, we'll move along here. So, sed quoniam de potentibus terrae non nullos ibidem habebat emulos, fretus eorum auxilio voti mei campos extidi. So let me try that section. But since regarding the powers of the earth, I guess the people of influence, in that very place, he had several rivals. And I was granted my prayer for help.
Fretus, which means relying on, takes an ablative.
Right.
So relying on their help, I was in possession of my wish.
Yes.
I was in possession, but is that extended?
Yes, extity is it's the equivalent of I was.
Yeah.
I stood as.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen that a couple of times already. I think I'll add a note about that. It was a
Sometimes
little
it doesn't
confusing.
mean I stood out, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, literally, I stood out.
Mhm.
okay. Et primororum mihi sensum ipsius invidia manifesta conquisivit, excuse me. And I obtain guarding over me because of the flagrant envy of him.
Mhm.
So, William, you noted that sua invidia manifesta, that it's ablative. I don't think it is. I think it's the subject.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That
Mhm.
I agree. So that it's this obvious manifest hostility
Yeah.
acquired for me,
Yes.
the agreement of many people.
Mhm.
Yes.
So it's actually grammatically simpler than my note suggests.
Yeah, I think it's just that usually envy doesn't obtain things.
Right.
But that acquired protection for him.
Agreement, ascensum.
Well, the manifestation of it would obviously be something that the powers of the land would have noted, as obvious as that envy was.
Yeah, it's a very poetic formulation, isn't it? That envy acquired for me the assent of the approval of everyone.
I like it. I think it's a nice term.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So now we're on to, let me just check. Nobody's made a comment. Nobody needs to join. Mona, we're at chapter 5.
Okay.
Oh, and I've been,
Wait.
have we been forgetting to call out the chapter headings?
Right.
I remember having to learn how to do that.
Do we do chapter 4.2 yet?
Yeah, we need to do 4.2.
Oh, okay, sorry.
2. Yeah.
4.2. So
Irene says, wouldn't the ablative there also mean the same thing? Through his envy, he acquired agreement. Yes, but the subject wouldn't be he in that case, because it's that's why it doesn't make sense as that, because he didn't acquire agreement for me.
well, I think you could actually take it that way. It's just it's more awkward than having invidia be the subject.
Wouldn't you then need sua instead of ipsius, though?
Yeah, you wouldn't have ipsius if it was the subject. If it was.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
All the stronger. Yes. Okay, who wants to go on with the rest of 4? Do you want to keep going, Brian? Brian's gone.
I can take it.
I really didn't get
Okay.
further than 4.1.
Who was that who just volunteered?
I'll take it.
Okay, Chris, take it away.
Ab hoc artem scholarum nostrarum trirocinio, ita in arte dialectica nomen meum delitari cepit, ut non solum condisciplinorum meorum, verum etiam ipsius magistri fama, scholatim extinguetur.
I have a question. Where are we?
4.2.
4.2.
4.2.
Mhm.
I don't have a 4.2.
It's page 6 of the PDF that you gave
Oh,
us.
okay. It's in this this other thing. It's 5. It's 5. That's all right. I'm sorry. Keep going.
By this apprenticeship, our school, so in the dialectic art had my name began to spread, that the public opinion, not only of my fellow classmates, but of that master, little by little closing, was extinguished.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Hinc factum est, ut de me amplius ipse presumens, ad castrum corbolii quod parisace urbi vicinius est, quam totius scholas nostras transferam, ut inde videlicet crebiores disputationis assultas nostra daret importunitas. Hence it happened that he, presuming more about me, I transferred our school as soon as possible to Corbeil, which is near to the city of Paris. And thence, of course, more abundant, relentless assaults he gave us. Which I take it actually, I think I got the subject wrong on that. Isn't it that Abelard himself could give more relentless assaults?
I think it's the subject. I think the subject of Daret is importunitas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our importunity gave relentless, sort of created relentless assaults on us. Okay. Oh, and then then we're on to 5.1. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
There were a couple of comparatives in there, which is nearer to the city of Paris. I think it matters because the idea is that he ends up closer than he would have, and so that from there, namely, our relentlessness could give more frequent attacks of. I think both of those actually are real comparatives.
And at an even more basic level, in case anyone's fooled by this, for my money, that comparative adverb, which is the same as the comparative neuter singular form, Wicinius, is just really sneaky. It just doesn't look like an adverb. And then if you see it as an adverb, which Chris did, you then forget that it's a comparative adverb. So it's just tricky.
It is the neuter adjective here.
Sorry?
It is the neuter adjective here, though, to the fort of whatever.
Right, which is closer. Right, which is closer, yes. Thank you. All right, so we're Mona. Ready for you, is that right?
Oh, mute
sorry. Mona, you've been very quiet.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait. Am I? No?
You're on now. You're on
Oh,
now.
okay, I'm on now. Okay, I thought somebody said something. Non multo autem interjecto tempore, ex immoderata studii afflictione correptus, infirmitate coactus sum repatriare. After not much time had elapsed, an ablative absolute, however, correptus, having been seized by the severe affliction of study, coactus sum, I was compelled to return home because of illness, infirmitate. Et per annos aliquot a Francia remotus, and for several years, distant from or far from France, or the Ile de France, what was really considered Paris. Querebar ardientus ab his quos dialectica sollicitabat doctrina. I kept being sought out by those to whom or for whom dialectic instruction was of interest.
Yes.
Right. Elapsis autem paucis annis, but after a few years had elapsed, or a few years having been elapsed, cum ex infirmitate iam dudum convaluissim, after I had long recovered from illness, praeceptor meus ille Guilelmus Parisiacensis archdiaconus habitu pristino communitato commutato regularium clericorum ordinem se convertit. My teacher, William, the Archdeacon of Paris, his earlier state, or even maybe even garb, having been changed, se convertitit, he turned himself, or even devoted himself, to an order of religious clerics. Ea ut referebant intentione ut quo religiosior crederetur ad maiores pelationes gradum promoveretur. With this intention, as they used to say, that the more religious he was believed to be, he could be advanced to the rank of a more important prelate or bishop. Eo sicut in proximo contigit, eo Catalanensi episcopo facto. As it soon happened, he having been made a bishop of Chalon.
Great stuff.
Great.
Okay, so
one note in case anyone's has a problem with this, in line 2, I should have given a note. Querebar, of course, looks to a classicist like he was complaining, but it's Quairebar because the Middle Ages does that. Right? It's incredibly annoying. It's already hard enough to get students to distinguish between Quairo and Queror. And then if they spell it the same way, you just give up. But that's just my little irritation with the world. Karen,
now you know how it felt to do my PhD.
Sorry?
Now you know how it felt to do my PhD.
You didn't like all those E's either?
I had to deal with a lot of weird spelling and grammar and Latin and Catalan going back and forth for about 400 documents.
Oh,
those are the ones that I actively translated, not the ones that I skimmed to see if I needed them.
Well, you're not supposed to be happy when you do your PhD. You're supposed to just suffer.
Everybody else did. Why not you?
Right.
That's how it works.
On a more serious note, Karen writes, to your note, he became an Augustinian canon. No. If you say so, Karen, he became some kind of yes, he joined an order.
I think that's true for the time. I think he would have been considered an Augustinian.
Well, he could have joined a different order, couldn't he?
For some reason, I have it in my head that he was an Augustinian.
Oh, he may have been. I just don't.
But he could have been a Cluniac.
Well, this is either knowable or not, or else we just ask Karen. No,
he didn't. He was an Augustinian.
Wait, but he didn't. He was an Augustinian canon. This is so exciting. I love this chat. So Karen knows that he was an Augustinian.
That's what I said. I just had it in my head.
Right. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. Are we done, Mona? I can't remember. No, you're your next little chunk.
Okay. So section 5.2. Nec tamen hic sue conversiones habitus aut urbe Parisius aut a consueto philosophiae studio eam revocavit. And yet this manner of life caused by his conversion did not recall him either from the city of Paris or from his accustomed a consueto philosophiae studio, from his accustomed study of philosophy. Sed in ipso quoque monasterio ad quod se causa religionis contulerat statim more solito publicas exercuit scholas. But in the Ipso Quoque Monasterio, in the very monastery itself, to which ad quod he had devoted himself, se causa religionis, for the sake of religion. He immediately trained or exercised, carried out,
Conducted.
Carried out a public school in his accustomed manner.
In his accustomed way. Good.
I think the say contulerat just means he went there, like betook himself.
Okay.
Betook himself, right? And I don't know if you got this. It said in ipso quoque monasterio. And in this monastery also, right? It's just plain old quoque. I've spent a lot of time lately puzzling over. Sometimes it's quoque, it's quo and que, and sometimes it's quoque, and it's yet another thing to add to my list of annoying things about Latin.
Yeah, their quantities are different.
You mean in the Middle Ages, their quantities?
Well, no, I don't know about the Middle Ages.
Oh, you mean the quantities of the two words, right? But if it's prose, then you're stuck, and so
That's why we should have macrons on all of our texts.
Exactly, we should. I totally agree.
I really, I'm not being facetious. I really think that it should be part of a scholarly edition.
Jen, I certainly think that the canonical texts that anybody in an intermediate to advanced undergraduate course are likely to read should all be available with macrons, because life is short and hard, and they're otherwise going to go off and major in computer science and etc.
Well, if you're adding
macron,
adding punctuation, if you're adding word spaces, add macrons.
Right. So people say, no, we can't do it because the ancients didn't do it, but they didn't have capital letters. They didn't have word spaces. So
they had the apex over the I to
I know, but you see what I mean. So it's just a convention, and it's not a helpful one, I think. Anyway, hold it. Karen says he didn't. Wait, what do you mean he didn't? Oh, he didn't become another order. He was an Augustine canon, Abbey of St. Victor. Okay, and then she says she likes tormenting us, but that's her problem. Okay, Paula, you get the hardest paragraph of them all.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Take it away, 6.1.
I was like, what is this? Okay. I mean, let's go ablative, let's go genitive, let's go. I think there's some dative in there. Let's throw in some superlatives. What the heck, Abelard? Okay. This is from AD 1108. Hang on a second. Let me get this cat out of the way. Cum ego ad eum reversus ut ab ipso rhetoricam audirem inter cetera disputationum nostrarum conamina antiquam eos de universalibus sententiam patentissimis argumentorum rationibus ipsum commutare imo destruere compuli erat autem.
Paula, why don't you stop there and one trial at a time, I would say.
Sorry. I was reciting stuff for stuff from the Vulgate this Sunday for our Pentecost, and I got carried away.
Okay.
That one was actually harder. Okay. Let's start with tum ego ad eum reversus. Sorry. Would be V at this time. Then I to him having returned. Okay. Ut ab ipso rhetoricam audirem. In order that I should hear from him the rhetoric. Now, I was running into, I think it was, forget who it was. They were saying that ipso, in this sense, is this just medieval, or is this a reference to someone, the person being referred to being important?
I think it's medieval.
Well,
It's referring to him.
right. It's.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear rhetoric from the man himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the man himself. So like the great man himself, the expert. Yeah, okay. Because that was what I was reading, that there was this, that was a sense in ipso. Okay. Inter cetera disputationem nostrarum conamina. I don't know why that keeps messing me up. Among other efforts of our arguments. Did I get all those cases right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Antiquam eos de universalibus sententiam patentissimis argumentorum rationibus ipsum commutare. Okay.
And you're going to need compuli.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going to compuli.
Oh yeah, emo destruere compuli. Yeah.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure how far you wanted me to go.
Well, you need
Okay.
compuli because that's the verb.
To change his mind, I guess, concerning his traditional opinion, concerning the universal most accessible arguments or proofs. Indeed, to demolish, I was compelled.
I did compel. So that's the key. That's why Jen wanted you to focus on compuli, right?
Okay, I had a hard time tracking down compuli. I wasn't sure if it was active or passive.
It's the active third principal part with compello, compellere, compuli, compulsus. I'll add that to the vocabulary. So
okay, what's the subject of compuli destruere? Is it eus?
I compel. I compel.
I know eus is genitive, but
right. Jen, you do it. You explain it.
So compuli is first person singular perfect, right? I compelled.
Yep.
And then you compel someone in the accusative. So I compelled ipsum, the man himself. And then with an infinitive, I compelled him commutare, to change. And then you go back to the beginning, antiquam sententiam, his old opinion.
Okay.
And eos is his, so that you know it's not somebody else's opinion.
Right, yeah.
And then you fit everything else in exactly the way you did it.
By the obvious arguments of reason.
Okay, I was in a hurry. I didn't have time to really look up compuli properly.
Yep.
And
just the third principal part, as William said, of compello. I compelled.
okay.
So I compelled him to change his opinion about the universals, and that word universals we can talk about next time. Jameson, I don't know if you're at the ready with a quick explanation of universals versus particulars.
Not in the slightest. Scholastics like to.
If not, I've talked to Grace. I've had one conversation with Grace about it already, and if I were a little more rested, I could do it. So maybe
it's just concepts, basically. Concepts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Do you know all about this?
Yeah, it's basically from one the many. You can extrapolate an entire group from an example of that group.
But we're about to learn he has 3 separate possibilities for what that means.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and you're looking very.
But this is when they're starting to argue about it.
I don't know all about it, but I do medieval philosophy.
All right, so we'll start with you next time if you can join us. Otherwise, you'll be subjected to an excruciatingly uninformed exposition. Except I've got some good articles. Anyway,
Abelard is a fairly immediate ancestor to Aquinas, who has some really miserable Latin going.
Right.
But he's Aquinas is like the basis of. I know there's William of Ockham, but Aquinas has a lot of the logical basis that we use for scientific method.
An interesting note.
I don't know about that,
An interesting note here about universals. I'm going to try and see if I can convince a fellow classmate of mine to maybe come on this, but his senior thesis was on principles of individuation, specifically for his philosophy major, dealing with these universals and with individual things. So the difference between chairness itself and an individual chair here is what Abelard himself is starting to get into.
Yeah, it's the beginnings of modern logic, basically.
I know. What I can't understand is why, with all the things they have to worry about in the 12th century, they spend their time obsessing about this. I understand that the Trinity comes into it, but it still seems to me very weird. On a more practical note, I do also just want to say I find this very revealing that when he says I was going to learn rhetoric, that rhetoric includes logic, which is really what he's talking about.
I had a question. How are we pronouncing rhetoric at this time period? In a northern French.
We just say rhetorica, but do you have some other plan?
I did medieval Spain during this period. I get it.
So how do you want to pronounce rhetoric?
Is it like rhetoric, or are they trying to roll the R, or what are they doing?
Well, I'm sure they are. They're French or Breton. I'm sure they're saying
like
rhetorica.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's Breton, but yeah, he's Northern French.
Right.
So
Anyway.
there's definite accent to it. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So,
you're procrastinating because you don't want to translate the next sentence.
I already did, but.
Autem?
Okay, let me find my place again. I wrestled with it as long as I could before the class started. Let's see.
After Campuli.
What?
After Campuli?
Right. It's not the Latin I'm having trouble finding. I was trying to find in my translation here. Okay, there we go. Excuse me. Erat autem in ea sententia in communitate universalium ut. Sorry, I'll stop there. But there was in this opinion.
I think you just need to. The subject of Erat is just he. Yeah. He was in that opinion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in English we would say of this opinion, but the Latin's saying in this opinion.
Right.
Okay, so he was in this opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, de communitate universalium would be from the general community?
About his opinion about the community of universals.
I would even say commonality.
Commonality, yeah.
Okay.
I like commonality.
Okay, but he was in this opinion, of this opinion and commonalities. Okay. Ut eandem, sorry, essentialiter rem totam simul singulis suis inesse astueret individuis. Okay. In order that he demonstrate the whole thing essentially be in all the same thing at the same time, there are things equal.
Demonstrate?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He was arguing that the same thing was in essence the whole thing at the same time.
Well,
right, in its individual manifestations.
And there's your connection to the Trinity right there.
Yeah, but not yet.
I know. I was just saying that's a basic building block for the Trinity being 3 in 1.
Right. I heard reservations, doubts.
It's just my usual outcry against medieval philosophy.
But
what?
But I meant quibbles about.
Yeah.
No quibbles, no quibbles.
Okay.
All right. The ut there, it's not a purpose clause. It's actually a result clause.
Yeah.
The result clause depended on ea. So in this opinion, well, a substantive clause of result. In this opinion, namely that.
Yes.
So it's not in order to.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I know that in medieval times they get really lazy with the ut clause, and it turns into something that's almost like a quote clause.
Yeah.
It's just, and you're sitting there going, well, which is it supposed to be this time, Abelard?
Well, personally,
It's definitely results.
I think of it as kind of it's a kind of weak form of indirect statement, right? He was thinking that. Anyway, so there was this essential thing in individuals. The individual's quorum. Keep going, Paula. We've got one.
Yep.
We're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, I got 2.5 lines left, or 3 lines left. Quorum quidem nulla esset in essentia diversitas. Sorry, diversitas. 11th century now, Paula. 12th century. Of which things, indeed, not any should have been in essence a difference.
In the essence of which things there was no diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right? I almost understand what that means.
I would say difference in the sense that, so in the previous part of the sentence, he's kind of he's sort of paraphrasing William's thought, I would say, as almost an undeveloped philosophy pertaining to how an individual thing, a single thing, participates in the same form as everything else. And so in that case, when we talk about diversitas, I'm tempted to say, in the same way that when you add a difference to a genus, you get a species, then almost here, when you're talking about diversitas in essentia, you're talking about a difference in essences, whereas here he seems to be saying to me that William is saying there is no difference in these things, they're all kind of the same thing.
Well, there's no difference in essentia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no,
but there is, he's going to go on to say, there's this varietas sola multitudine accidentia. There
a variety of accidents.
So they're essentially the same thing. There is no difference in essentia. But Paula, keep going.
Okay. All right. Sed sola multitudine accidentium, or it will be accidentium, varietas. But from the singular multitudinous varieties occurring.
Sola is nominative singular, right? There's only, isn't that right?
Yeah.
There's only, but only variation in the multitude of
accidents
or incidental events.
Right.
So quite literally, he's saying that the principle of individuation of a specific thing was due to accidents rather than anything essential to itself.
Right. So in other words,
the fundamental difference between the two views is that in the first one there is one single essence, which each thing then has in itself as the same essence, which they then differ from accidentally. And then in the second view, they each have their own essence, which is common to them because they don't differ from each other.
Right. They only differ. On this view, they only differ. So two people only differ by incidental things like this guy's tall, this guy's short. Right. But they're the same, but they're fundamentally the same.
The idea is that in the first view is that just where the essence of humanity is in every human, and in the second one, each human has their own essence. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you put it like that, but I think that's the...
But just to be clear, the sentence that we've read so far is just one proposition.
No, there's two opinions. There's the first one that William used to have, and then there's the one that Abelard...
Yeah, but we're not at the second one yet.
Sorry.
So hold on. We're just trying to construe the first sentence.
Sorry.
Where he says, there's no difference in essence, but only variation in accidents.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the you and I are both humans, and I guess even he would say probably in this example men.
But we're not the same human.
But we're not the same. But we're only different by little accidental things, right?
Exactly.
And then we're going to get the second view, which is what you're talking about, that he changes to in the next sentence, which is the one that Paul is now going to translate.
And we can tell that sorry, we can tell that the whole sentence is one opinion because of something that, Paul, I think confused you a little bit. Esset, subjunctive. It's subjunctive. I think you tried to say like would be or something. It's not. In English, you just say was, as we've been translating it, because it's a subordinate clause in indirect discourse. So all of this is the thing that he would astrueret, that he would argue. And because there's subordinate clauses, you put subordinate clauses inside indirect statements into the subjunctive, so that you know it's all part of the one statement.
Right.
All right. Sic autem, what?
No, go.
Sic autem istam tunc suum correxit sententiam. We'll stop there. But thus, that thence he corrected his argument.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ut de inceps rem eamdem non essentialite, sed indifferenter diceret. I love reading 12th century philosophy in the original Latin, trying to figure out both at once. It's like juggling. Okay, and I suck at juggling. So that next he should have been saying, or he was saying, the same thing was not essentially, but indifferently.
It wasn't the same thing. It was the same thing, not in essence, but indifferently. Yes.
By not being differentiated.
By not being different.
Yeah.
Right. I have a
well,
sentence.
I figured it was indifferent, like not different, but the translations I kept running into said indifferent. And I'm like, kind of more like not different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Diversely, maybe diversely.
This theory holds. This is from this commentary from the Oxford Oxford Medieval Text Edition. There's an appendix. The second revised theory held that the universal is not an essence, but is what is not different between, e.g., Socrates and Plato.
Yeah.
The so-called indifference theory, which you medieval philosophy hounds, presumably that means something to you all.
Okay, basically what it boils down to is Abelard was condemned in part because he was trying to use logic to prove metaphysics, religious metaphysics. That he was trying to use logic, like of this world, reasoning, to
right,
prove not of this world concepts, which a century later Aquinas was doing merrily right and left. But at the time, Bernard and his friends didn't like it, so Abelard got nailed for it.
Well, but that's later. That's when he applies it to the Trinity.
Yeah, his being nailed for it. His being nailed for it had less to do with any kind of like content of what he was doing, and more by the fact that he pissed everyone off, basically.
Well, right.
Well, yes, I mean, but that was the excuse they came up with.
But in any case, that's later, right? So when he starts writing about the Trinity is when he gets in real trouble. Here, he's just fighting with William about the nature of.
If you look at the period, in the 5th century, they're trying to determine what is Christ's nature. 4th and 5th centuries, and that's how you end up with things like the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creed, which is that it's 3 in 1. You've got the Trinity, and that's done by the guy who helped kill the what's her name in Alexandria. But anyway, by the 12th century, what you're getting into is people are trying to discuss what is the nature of the world and God, and the two of them in connection to each other.
But they never stopped doing both of those things. They continued doing both of those things all through the Middle Ages and before and after,
Well, what I'm saying is that there would be times that it would pop up, and it was going on throughout the time, but then you had times where people were discussing it, shall we say, especially vociferously, and then some people will get into trouble. And as you say, personalities came into a lot of it, but what I'm saying is that by the time you get to the 12th century, you have people discussing, that's where it had progressed. It's still about the Trinity, but it's also about the overall nature of God and the world, And I mean, this is when you have the Cathars are rising, and they have this strongly bifurcated Manichaean view that the world is evil and spiritual is good, and the church is part of the world, and that's where they got in trouble.
That's way too much for me to take in at this time of night.
I think the amazing thing about this text, and this is someone who doesn't really get into philosophy very much, but it's the personality. It's there. The immo destruere. I made him change his opinion. Actually,
I destroyed him.
I wiped the floor with him.
Yeah,
so good. It's all throughout this. It's wonderful.
All right, we're going to pick up universals next time because we're not out of the woods. So if anyone has questions, send me emails. If anybody couldn't get on, we have final comments. Irene asked about we're not translating autem enough. Sometimes autem is just a transition word, which is why we've been ignoring it. But we stop ignoring it, I guess, because we shouldn't. Karen doesn't like universals. Can you imagine if Abelard had Twitter? Sure.
Yes,
French R would have been rolled or trilled, not the modern uvular version.
Well, I can't roll my R's at L, sorry.
Right.
So
All right.
it's not going to happen here.
Okay,
I
on
know
that
they
note,
but I just can't do it.
thank you guys, everybody. And if you want to join us next week, please do come on back. The usual thing, it seems to be working. So except for Greg, who couldn't get on, and I don't know why that is. So thanks, and this seems like a reasonable amount of Latin to try and get through, and we'll keep going because that's what we do. All right. Thoughts? Okay.
Wonderful.
End the meeting, and it'll just. I always feel so reluctant to end the meeting.